Hello internet, and today is going to be another book opinion. Those videos in which I tell you my opinion on a book, and today's book is going to be The Innocent Mage by Karen Miller. This is the very first book in the Kingmaker Kingbreaker duology. So I got heavily invested in this book. Like, there was something about this book that just drew me in. Well, there were two people and I was shipping them so hard that I was really invested in this book. So this book, it takes place in this land where there are magical people called the Dorian. They have magic. Magic to them now has kind of dwindled into like everyday little tricks and stuff because they don't have to use it for anything super seriously. And then there are the non-magical people who are Orin. Now these are two like ethnically different groups. Like the Orin were there on this land and then the Dorian came in and now they all live on this land together. Now the ruling class is the Dorian because they have magic, and this magic is very important for this wall. There is a wall that surrounds their kingdom and all their lands that keeps them safe from the outside world, which has like fallen to the destruction of magic, and the only way that you can keep this wall in place is by the king or the queen or whoever is this weather mage continually using this weather magic, and by doing so that gives power to this wall, but also you're controlling the magic. So like you're watering plants where they need to be watered, bringing winds, bringing sunshine, all of that sort of stuff. So this book follows a kid named Asher. He is the youngest son of a fishing family, and he does not like this. Like, his brothers are really mean to him because he is the youngest. His portions are taken of the most because it's like, oh, he earned it, but he's part of the family, so he needs to give it up. And because he's the youngest, he needs to give up more. And he's getting really tired of this situation because he really just loves his dad and he wants to take care of his dad, and he's tired of his brothers taking his earnings when he's working more. And he's like, I can't keep supporting the biggest half of this family. So he decides he's going to go to the capital and try to make a new life for himself, at least for a year. And in that year, he's going to try to incur enough of a fortune that he can come back to a small fishing town and he can buy himself and his father a boat, and they just get rid of his other brothers because they were awful, right? So he goes on this trip and he ends up meeting a prince, the Dorian prince named Garth. Now Garth has a few issues of himself. He's one of the only Dorian born without any magical abilities, and this is unheard of. So he has a younger sister. Dorian tend not to have more than one child or one or two children, especially if you're in the royal bloodline, because of the importance of having this weather magic. And so the fact that he is the oldest born son, he can't have magic, and he has to have a younger sister to be born to hold this magic and become the next ruling queen, really puts him in a tenuous situation. And through like a lot of happenstance that was purposely placed, Asher ends up becoming the assistant to Gar, the prince, and our story goes on from there. And so like there's this prophecy done about like the Innocent Mage. It's an Orin prophecy about how like the Innocent Mage will come at the darkest time and save everybody, but by doing so they will also free the Orin from oppressive reigns, which are like so established that the Orin don't have magic, and if an Orin even attempts to do magic, they will be murdered. Like, if you get caught doing magic and you're not a Dorian, you're dead. And like the Orin have their own version of magic, but they're not allowed to use any magic, not Dorian magic, not their own. Like, everyone believes Orons don't have magic, and so the Oron, there's a special Oron wizard community, and they're thinking, hey, the Innocent Mage is gonna come along, he's gonna fix it. And a lot of this is led by this girl named Daphne, who is supposedly the daughter of the prophet who gave, or like who is like not the daughter but the heir. Like she's farther along in the line of the prophet who saw this first prophecy about the Innocent Mage. I don't like her, okay? Let's get that out of the way. Now, after I've explained this whole entire book to you, I got really invested. This book is very slow going. So it's very dependent on you liking the characters and getting involved in their lives and their politics and all the little intricacies of what's going on, of an Oron getting a status because he's all of a sudden a prince's assistant, of a prince who doesn't have magic and him trying to kind of still keep his head held high, of a bratty younger sister who sees no value in anyone who doesn't have magic, even her own brother, and like all of these sort of things. And then we gotta add in more components of like what's on the other side of the wall, Daphne and her little trickeries to try to push Asher more into a perfect position of being the innocent mage, and we continue from there. So like this book really does depend on those things. I do think if like you're into high fantasy, if you're into stories that like really just want you to like the main characters and get you into the political intrigue, you'll enjoy this. But I'm pretty sure the reason why I was so heavily invested was because I was shipping Garth and Asher so hard. Like I just had this perfect image in my head. Like I knew because of this prophecy, Asher's gonna have magic and Garth does not. So I was like, oh my gosh, something's gonna happen. Like they're gonna end up rising up against his sister. His sister becomes queen, and she was a pretty interesting character. She was pretty awful. So I was like, oh, like they're going to like get involved and she's going to become queen, and like they're going to have to usurp her because there's this whole thing about like the usurper's house and the prophecy and whatnot. And like they're going to be like a tag team partner duo with Garth being this like holy like king, but he doesn't have magic, and he's showing you like people without magic can be really awesome, and like because he's Doran, that's gonna like really mean something. And then like Asher is gonna be like the first Oron that's really publicly acknowledged, at least in like the past 100 years, as a powerful mage, and they're gonna like be working together and ruling the kingdom and like dissuading oppression and stereotypes, and like showing everyone that it really doesn't matter whether or not you have magic or you don't, in being badass, and you can just be badass because being badass doesn't depend on magic at all. And like I just had all these wild dreams about my team and my boys being together, and it doesn't really happen like that in this first book, because like I said, this first book is really slow. Like Asher doesn't find out he has magic. There's nothing like about that. There's a whole nother plot point that comes in later, and you're just like, well, okay, and you kind of have to go along for the ride. So I'm not quite sure if this is a book I would recommend to everyone, because it's a book I enjoyed because I have my own dreams of what it's like and what it should be like. Plus there's also this problem with the female characters in this book. More so in the second book, which I have yet to finish, but also in this book, there are 3 female characters and a whole bunch of male characters. Admittedly, you only get 2 or 3, 4 male main characters that like are really worth anything, but still, like, it's a whole world of males and there's only 3 females that you really get to know, and none of them are like worth anything, okay? Like they're done in a way where I'm like, okay, at least they're like not one-dimensional, but there's not anything about any of them that I can really root for. There's the queen, and although she's sweet and kind and loving, she also excuses the evilness of her daughter. Then there's her daughter, who literally thinks everybody who doesn't have magic is worthless and is mean and cruel, and just like she doesn't like care about anyone else. And even though Gar has no magic, he's no threat to her at all, she goes out of her way to be cruel to him and to show him he's worth nothing. Where it's like a very like Azula Zuko circumstance, like, you know, where Azula like tries to like torture Zuko sometimes because she's just mean like that. This girl is kind of like that. So I'm like, well, can't like you, even though you get to see like her younger side, like her being like a young girl, and you get to see that sort of vulnerability. Like, it doesn't excuse how rude she is all the time. And then there is Daphne, who is the Oron who's supposed to have seen and be like part of this whole line, who sees the innocent mage coming. But the problem with her is she does not care about Asher as a person. She cares about him as a tool that is a means in which she is going to free the Oron people. And instead of being upfront with him about his destiny, about what's going on, and being there for him, and like having him be able to like, you know, be aware of the situation, she's very callous and cruel and really doesn't care about anything pertaining to him outside of him staying in the prince's house as the prince's assistant and fulfilling his destiny. Like, she does not care about anything outside of that, and no matter what happens that forces him to stay on that path, she's like A-okay with it. She's over here like cheering. And I'm gonna give you an example. So there is this, like, it's a spoiler example, but there is this time where Asher decides, okay, my year's up, I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna see my father again, right? Well, when he tries to go back home, something really horrible happens. Like, something that breaks his soul happens to him, and he ends up having to come back to the capital and continue to be Garther's assistant, although he originally wanted to go back home and take care of his father. Now, when he tells Daphne of this incident and why he is back, when originally he wanted to leave and go take care of his father, she's like, well, I guess that's how everything's meant to be. And like, when she's aware of that, like, as soon as someone tells her, like, she's not even talking to Asher, like, someone breaks the news to her, like, this third party friend is like, hey, Asher's back, but like, before you get happy, something horrible happened to him, here's what happened. And she's just like, yay, oh my gosh, yes, yes. And I'm like, what? And she's like, well, and the guy's like, what? And she's like, well, at least he's still around so he can fulfill his destiny. And I'm just like, you're not gonna empathize with this guy? Like, I get, like, the importance of your destiny, but you're actively cheering something horrible happened to him and has broken him. Like, you're cheering about that, because he as a person doesn't matter compared to your destiny. And so I didn't like her at all. And like, this series is one of those that like I was okay with, but then started to get me anxious, and then I realized I just don't like any of the female characters, and I just wish they all went away. Daphne especially, because Asher ends up liking her, so that ruins my ship, but also because she's a garbage person, and Asher doesn't deserve to be wasting his time on her, and she definitely doesn't deserve it, because, like, I don't care what excuse is given to her, she actively cheers when something horrible happens to him, as long as it means that he's still where she wants him to be. And she doesn't want to tell him, like, what's going on and why these things have to happen and anything like that. She just wants to lead and guide his life. And, like, you realize she's been really involved in, like, putting him in certain situations so to move forward destiny. So, like, I don't know what the point was of this was. I'm just gonna, like, I'm ranting about this book. It's a pretty decent book. Like, I got invested in it more so than I probably should have. But again, I think what got me through it was because I was imagining these things, and I really liked the two main male characters and their interactions and their friendship, that it really got me through most of the book. But like, admittedly, I've started the second book, but I stopped that because I was not a fan of Daphne and like the characters outside. I just didn't like them, and I didn't like where the story was going. So I think it's something that people could like. If, like, you're really into high fantasy, if you're into adult high fantasy, and you're okay with stories moving a lot slower. Like I said, you know from, like, page 2 that Asher is the Innocent Mage, but he doesn't even discover that in the course of this book. Like, so it's pretty slow going. I'm not going to suggest this to anyone, but if it sounds like your thing, give it a shot, I guess. It is a really long book. I read this on audio, and that was like 20 hours of my life. So yeah, it's really long. So if you like what you're seeing here and you want to continue to see more, click on those many down below, and goodbye, internet.